I never expected a simple restaurant encounter to become a life-changing lesson in humility. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started with the soul-crushing weight of uncertainty. Sitting alone in that crowded diner, clutching my coffee cup like it was a lifeline. The bitter steam curled into my face, but all it did was remind me how lost I felt. The clattering of plates echoed like a ticking clock. Counting down to my next mistake, I glanced around, noticing the families laughing, couples flirting, and friends exchanging stories. Their joy felt foreign to me, like a dream I could no longer reach. In that moment, I was so absorbed in self-pity that I never saw her come in. She swept through the door, a flash of red among a sea of ordinary. Long hair cascading, eyes like stormy skies. She exuded a magnetic chaos that pulled my gaze right to her. I watched as she reached the counter, her demeanor a striking contrast to my own pitiful state. Minutes passed, but it felt like an eternity. I could see the waitress rolling her eyes, but she only smiled back, forcing warmth into the cold silence. I noticed the fidgeting patrons nearby, whispers of judgment swirling in the air like fireflies. Who was she? The enigma of her presence sent a thrill skimming up my spine. Then, it happened. She turned, locking eyes with me. My heart lurched. There was something in her Styrian understanding that no words could capture. In that transient moment, my trembling hands tightened around my cup, my breath catching in my throat. Shock and curiosity raced through me. Why did she feel so familiar? Why did my heart beat so hard? Just as the tension reached its peak, the door swung open again, two men bursting in, their voices cutting through the warmth. They were wild with laughter, but when they spotted her, their expressions changed, eyes narrowing, fists clenching. Suddenly, their energy shifted the air. It crackled with danger, and I could feel the room holding its breath. Murmurs flew from table to table, uncertainty brewing like an impending storm. Before I could process what was happening, the woman turned and walked straight toward me. I was frozen with disbelief, my insides twisting in knots. She knelt in front of me, her urgency overwhelming. "Get out," she whispered fiercely, glancing back toward the men, fear dancing in her eyes. "You don't want to get involved. My mind whirled. I sat there, a boiling pot of confusion and curiosity. Was I truly meant to listen? Her wild courage was intoxicating, and for a heartbeat, I felt alive. But did I dare take the leap? Did I have the strength to trust a stranger in a moment of chaos? A lump formed in my throat, and I could hear my heart thumping like a drum as I moved to stand. The front door slammed shut, the din of laughter evaporating. The energy in the room had shifted again, thick with a sensation I can only describe as primal fear. Eyes were locked on us, the whispering patrons, the furious men like a storm cloud ready to burst. What had I stepped into? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The tension in the diner pressed against my chest, the air heavy with anticipation as I exchanged a glance with the woman. She seemed to sense my hesitation, a flicker of impatience flashing across her face. I could see her chest rising and falling rapidly, a reflection of her own tumult, urging me on with silent pleas. Suddenly, the men took a step closer, their reckless laughter morphing into harsh taunts that clawed at the edges of my courage. "What's wrong, babe? Lost your way?" one jeered, his voice dripping with menace. I felt my heart thud painfully against my ribs, like it wanted to leap free. I was losing myself in that moment, spinning toward the whirlwind of her world, yet still shackled to my fear. "Go," she hissed, a plea that sliced through my muddled thoughts. It was a command that ignited something deeply buried within me, a flicker of bravery that I scarcely recognized. But just as I began to obey, The men noticed my movement and closed in a blur of instinct. I rose from my seat, fueled by something between adrenaline and despair. The diner felt like a cage. The murmurs echoed ominously, demanding answers, explanations, something. I stumbled toward the restroom, every nerve in my body screaming for flight. But before I could make my escape, I felt a firm grip at my shoulder. "Where do you think you're going?" The man's voice was low and rough, a mix of predatory curiosity and contempt. I turned, shock rippling through me as I stared into his cold, piercing gaze. It was all tumult and chaos, with the din of the diner setting the stage for my undoing. Just then, the woman's voice cut through like a beacon. "Leave him alone." She stood tall now, a force so visceral it took my breath. There was a wildness in her that was both alarming and enchanting. She was ready to take on the world, or at least these two thugs. "What's it to you, sweetheart?" One of them snapped, amusement flickering in his eyes. But I could see the simmering panic beneath his bravado. They were more reckless than confident. A flicker of something changed in the diner's era collective intake of breath. People shifted uneasily, the inertia of the moment drawing them into our drama. In that charged silence, I saw the glimmer of hope in the woman's eyes. She believed I could stand beside her in this. But doubt gnawed at my insides like a persistent hunger. What if we just leave? I stumbled over my words, desperation clawing at me. "We don't need to, don't you dare." She cut me off, her voice firm yet infused with an unexpected tenderness. "Don't let them see you back down. They feed on it. If we leave now, they win that split second." The world surged around me, an invisible tide blocking the exits, crushing my need for safety. It felt as if I stood at a precipice, teetering between the fear of the men and a strange connection with her. This fiery stranger held a mirror to my soul, showing me every shadow of insecurity I had buried deep within. And just as I was about to step back, something shifted. One of the men, perhaps feeling the wave of confrontation swell beyond his control, turned sharply and pointed toward a nearby table, where an elderly man had gleefully been nursing a cup of soup, unwittingly caught in the chaos. "How about we have some fun with the old man?" He sneered, the malice crystal clear in his tone. "Stop," I shouted, and the word echoed louder in my spirit than in the room. The sudden arrival of fierce protectiveness shocked me. It felt alien yet right. I took a step forward, no longer hiding behind the woman but alongside her, emboldened by her courage. But before we could seize our moment, the door swung wide open again, a blast of cold air swirling in, carrying whispers of a police siren that slowly crept closer. Just as relief washed over me, the other man laughed maniacally. "Let's hustle before we get pinched." With that, the two men turned sharply and darted toward the exit, leaving confusion in their wake. Stunned silence followed, like the settling dust after an explosion. I turned to the woman, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins, and found her staring intently at me. There was nothing hollow about those stormy eyes. They glimmered with fierce recognition, as if she could see every fracture within me. But before I could ask the questions clawing at my mind, the diner erupted into chaos again, patrons dispersing, retelling the tale of what had just happened, and just like that, amid the fragments of shock and adrenaline, she slipped away, her presence replaced by a whirlwind of panic in a fading sense of chaos, leaving me standing frozen, bewildered and desperate, searching for the unfamiliar yet captivating stranger who had confronted my fears. Then, as the last of the commotion faded, realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave. In that diner, beneath all the smoke and echoes of nearly lost resolve, a single thought flashed through my mind. What if I could reach her again? What if she held the key to the part of me that I had let wither? And, as I turned to follow her trail, my heart raced at one unsettling conclusion. The sirens drew nearer, the air thick with unspoken threats, and the knowledge that leaving might mean more than just escaping chaos. It could mean I was leaving behind a lifeline, one that I dared to clutch onto when every other grip had failed me. But as I dashed towards the door, my breath caught in my throat. The woman was gone. Overwhelmed by panic and urgency, I only hoped she was safe, Wherever she had gone, as I burst outside into the starkness of the cold street. My heart hammered against the chilling grip of the unknown, and all at once, I felt the world spin out of control once more. The bustling street outside the diner buzzed with unfamiliar sounds that felt foreign against the backdrop of my chaotic whirlwind inside. Dark clouds hung low, dripping with an impending storm, mirroring the tempest of emotions within me. I shoved my hands deep into my pockets, battling the chill that seeped into my bones while scanning the street for any trace of her, the woman who had sparked a flicker of courage I never knew resided in me. The sirens wailed in the distance, weaving through the echoes of laughter and conversation around me. I felt invisible, a mere ghost drifting amid the living, and the thought gnawed at me. With every passing moment, I could feel the adrenaline ebbing away, leaving behind a hollow ache of loneliness deeper than before. I pushed through the crowd, shoulders brushing against strangers who paid me no mind, their lives disentangled from mine. It was surreal, the way I could blend into this mass of humanity yet remain utterly alone. The memory of her fierce stance against those brutes lingered like the warmth of the diner's glow, guiding me forward even as my heart sank with the realization that she was gone. Just then, a soft touch caught my attention. A child, with big, brown eyes that sparkled with curiosity, tugged at my sleeve, pointing at a colorful balloon floating above a nearby vendor. "Mister, can you get that for me?" she asked, her voice a thin thread of innocence, cutting through my despair. Startled, I looked down, the simple request a jolt of warmth amid the cold reality. With a gentle nod, I squatted to her level. "Why do you want the balloon?" I asked, hoping to navigate this tender moment. She leaned closer, her gaze narrowing with purpose. "Because it's bright and happy. When I feel sad, I want something that makes me smile again." A bittersweet knot tightened in my throat. Her words echoed the battle within me. How I craved something bright to hold on to, something to lift the weight of uncertainty looming over my life. I let out a soft laugh and ruffled her hair, the small gesture igniting a flicker of hope. "All right, hold on," I said, standing up and making my way toward the vendor. The child's excited squeals lifted my spirits as I handed over a few bills in exchange for the balloon, its vibrant colors dancing in the wind. When I returned, I watched as her face broke into a radiant smile, illuminating a heaviness I hadn't realized I carried. It struck me then that even small moments of joy could rise from the rubble of despair, and my heart swelled with a glimmer of hope, however fleeting it might be. As the child clutched the balloon, right before she dashed back to her giggling friends, her eyes sparkled with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, mister," she chimed, a melody of innocence that echoed in my heart long after she disappeared into the crowd. Inspired by the moment, I stepped back into the current of life swirling around me, trying to shake off the shadows that loomed ever closer. But as I strolled along the sidewalk, the world still felt heavy thoughts wrapping around those impending choices, the fear of what would come next tugging at me relentlessly. I found a park bench and settled onto the cold wood, my thoughts consumed by her again. Was she safe? Did she escape? A flurry of worry rushed through my veins. I pulled out my phone, hovering my finger over its screen. What if I tried to find her? Just as my mind raced through 100 scenarios, the familiar sound of police sirens shrieked past like a haunting reminder of the chaos. My breath quickened as questions flooded my mind. What would I say if I found her? Did she need rescuing again? But what if she didn't want anything to do with me? I dropped my phone back into my pocket. Perhaps she was content disappearing into her world. And here I sat, paralyzed by the fear of reaching out again to someone who had just tasted the flames of chaos alongside me. As I sat there, lost in the turbulence of my thoughts, a figure emerged in the distance. My heart stuttered to a halt, a dark silhouette against the gray sky. It drew nearer, and my pulse raced with an amalgamation of hope and dread. Could it be her? My heart surged at the wild notion as the figure drew closer, tendrils of anticipation dancing in my gut. But as the person came into view, the air grew denser with disappointment. This wasn't her. It was a tall man with a solemn face, glancing around with an urgency that sent a chill down my spine. He locked eyes with me for a fleeting second before veering away, lost in the swell of humanity flowing by. The deep, aching solitude crept back in. I was on the brink of a revelation, or perhaps just another heartache. The sky darkened overhead, ominous clouds swirling like my thoughts, and as the first droplets of rain began to fall around me, I couldn't shake the sense that everything was gravitating toward an inevitable storm, not just from the nature of the weather, but within myself and the situation I so desperately wanted to navigate. And just as despair began to settle its heavy weight upon my shoulders, I heard a woman's voice call out to someone behind me, voice crackling with familiarity that sent shivers through me. I turned instinctively, and a shock rocketed through my veins as I saw her standing just a few feet away, the woman who had fought alongside me. Her stormy eyes now brimming with something that could only be described as wild determination. "Help me," she cried, desperation lacing each word as she spun around and caught sight of me. Her hair whipped wildly with the gusting wind, and the ferocity of her presence reminded me of the strength she had shown before. In that moment, every fear I had faded, replaced by a singular drive to a seat at it was an electric call to arms that sent my heart racing, igniting a new wave of courage within me as I leaped towards her, ready to face whatever danger lay ahead, ready to fight against the overwhelming tide of uncertainty that was pulling us both under. The rain poured in earnest now, each droplet a deafening reminder of the chaos that surrounded us. I pushed through the crowd, adrenaline surging as I reached her. Her eyes, wide and pleading, were the anchor I didn't know I needed amid the impending storm. "What happened?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath as the raindrops plastered my hair to my forehead. She was soaked, and I could see the tremor in her hands as she struggled to speak. "We have to go. They're looking for me." Her voice was strained, raw with fear. The weight of her words plunged into my chest like stones, a vice tightening my resolve. "They won't stop until they find me." With no time to ponder the reality of her situation, instinct took over. The bustling crowd around us seemed oblivious, wrapped in their own worlds, while we stood at the precipice of chaos. "Then let's move," I said, grasping her hand and pulling her close, the raw urgency of the moment coursing through us both. We dashed into the nearest alley, seeking refuge beneath the shadows of a towering building. My mind raced. I couldn't fathom the dark forces that were chasing her. My heart pounded not just from fear, but from the thrill of being on the brink of an adventure, the adrenaline dulling the edges of panic. "Do you have a place we can go?" I asked, my breath heavy from the urgency of our predicament. She shook her head, the despair washing over her features sending a pang through my chest. "Not anymore. They burned it down," she muttered, and I felt the chill creep up my spine. "I saw them. I've been trying to stay one step ahead, but they're relentless." As the rain hammered down, an involuntary shiver ran through both of us. In that tense moment, I sensed how utterly entwined our fates had become. I was no longer just a man longing for connection. I was now a chosen ally in her battle against invisible foes. "Do you have any idea where they might be?" I pressed, heart racing. The rain's blurred streetlights into halos, and shadows danced, twisting reality into something out of a nightmare. She hesitated, eyes darting to the end of the alley as if she could feel their presence lurking just beyond the shadows. "There's a safe house nearby, but it's a gamble. If they catch me," she faltered, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. "We're not letting them catch you," I said fiercely, anger igniting the spark of hope I had found earlier. "I won't let them take you away." Riding on the edge of desperation, she looked at me, her gaze searching mine. "You really mean that? You don't even know what they're capable of." Suddenly, the enormity of the situation crashed down on me. My heart swirled with a cocktail of determination and trepidation. "No, I don't. But it's not about that right now, it's about you. We're in this together. Wherever you go, I'll follow." She searched my face like it held the answers to her salvation, uncertainty creeping back into her gaze. "You don't understand," she whispered, the weight of unspoken fears hanging between us. "Try me," I urged, my voice softening, while the rain cascaded around us, each drop amplifying the moments closing in like a shroud. "Please, let me help." Taking a steadying breath, her resolve returned. "All right, But if we're going to do this, we have to move fast, she warned, her voice resolute. They won't stop no matter what. Just then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed through the alley, chilling the air with foreboding. My heart leaped into my throat as I instinctively pulled her behind me, positioning myself in front of her like a shield. Stay hidden, I whispered, my voice tense but firm. As shadows loomed closer, I caught glimpses of the figures darting through the rain-soaked street, searching, probing. My pulse quickened, instincts screaming that these were the men she feared. Desperation clawed at me, and just as I braced myself to stand my ground, someone emerged from the shadows, causing my breath to hitch in my throat. It was the tall man from earlier, the one I had dismissed, but now he stood with an ominous presence, his eyes locking onto mine. The familiar weight in the air shifted, thickening as realization sunk in. I hadn't expected to see him again, nor did I want to. You need to come with me, he commanded, his demeanor exuding authority like a dark cloak. Who the hell are you? I spat, unwilling to back down, even though my heart thundered fear into my core. But then, as if sensing the chasm of desperation between us, he stepped closer and leaned in, his voice dropping to a low murmur that would change everything. I'm the only one who can keep you both safe. You don't want to know the alternatives. A shiver ran down my spine, and I could feel her trembling behind me, her hands clutching at my shirt. The stakes had just risen exponentially, and with a sudden rush of urgency, I realized I was not only fighting for her life but for mine as well. As I glanced over my shoulder, I could see the fear in her eyes mirrored in my own reflection. The moment hung heavy between us, an electrifying tension filled with the weight of unspoken possibilities. The path we were on was less a choice and more a sacrificious step into the unknown that felt as entangling as the rain itself, with the man waiting for an answer, and her eyes pleading for a lifeline. My heart grappled with uncertainty. Did I trust him, or would it lead us straight into the perilous grip of danger? Choose now, he warned again, the air crackling with hesitation. The world narrowed in on us, the decision as immense as the storm surrounding us. In that heavy silence, as the rain poured down harder, the last shreds of doubt stampeded through me. There was no turning back. We were already too deep into the storm, and I was ready to drown if it meant I wouldn't let her face it alone. Let's go, I said, voice trembling but resolute, sealing our fate with a single decision. The flicker of hope I'd grasped moments before flickered again, igniting the courage within, as we stepped forward into the unknown and uncertain alliance, where the only thing that mattered was our survival. The pounding rain subsided, morphing into a light drizzle, yet the tension surrounding us was palpable. The man, who had asserted his presence in our lives with an air of unsettling control, led us through the winding alleyways, his long strides forcing us to keep pace. The shadows of the night cloaked his intentions, and I stole glances at him, trying to uncover the secrets hidden behind his steel-blue eyes. Why are you helping us? I couldn't contain the question any longer, directed at his broad back as we moved swiftly down the slick pavement. She squeezed my hand tighter, anchoring her own uncertainty against my resolve. He glanced back at me, his expression unreadable, because there aren't many that can survive what's coming. And trust me, it's not just your life on the line anymore. A chill crept into my bones with his words. The weight of truth mixed with discomfort as I realized we were now ensnared in a web woven by forces beyond our understanding. Where are we headed? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but I could sense the tremor of dread within it. The safe house is close, he replied, quickening his pace as if hurrying us to sanctuary. But we need to keep our heads down. The storm might have concealed us for a moment, but they won't be far behind. Fear clawed at my insides. The concept of safety felt elusive, constantly threatened by the encroaching darkness. As we moved, I fought against disturbing images of what could await us should we fail to escape, shadows lurking in corners, eyes watching from above, a relentless manipulation of fate that felt all too real. We ducked into a small door tucked between two buildings, and the man ushered us inside. The dimly lit space reeked of dampness and desperation, scattered with mismatched furniture and grimy, peeling wallpaper. Flickering light bulbs strained to illuminate a few weary faces. Some were strangers like us, while others bore signatures of conflict etched sharply into their features. It felt like a refuge and a prison combined, hope mingling with the haunting echoes of despair. He gestured for us to take a seat at a battered table in the corner while he spoke in hushed tones to a worn man behind the bar. Their urgency colored their conversation, but I strained to catch fragments that twisted my stomach tighter. "The hunters closing in, we need to move them soon. Who are they?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly as I felt the ominous weight of their secrecy pressing against my chest. "Who's hunting us?" The tall man turned, his expression darkening as he deliberated for a moment. "You're more entangled than you realize. There's a network and they want to use you for a purpose neither of you fathom. But it's time for choices to be made before time runs out." An unbidden fear clawed at my mind, gnawing on the edges of our situation and threatening to devour whatever fragments of hope I clung to. I looked at her. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the shadows of our uncertain future. "Why did you come to me?" I murmured softly, needing to understand what had propelled her into this chaos. Her gaze dropped to the table, and for a fleeting moment, I almost lost her. "I thought you could help. I didn't want to face it alone." Her vulnerability unfurled between us, wrapping around my heart with an unexpected tenderness that made the chaos seem momentarily distant. "Together," I said, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." But our fragile moment was abruptly interrupted when the door swung open, slamming against the wall with a bombastic crash. The man who entered had an aura of authority that sent shivers racing down my spine. He surveyed the room, eyes scanning each face until they landed on us, noting the tall man's presence beside us. "You aren't supposed to be here," he declared, a venomous edge coating his words, setting the atmosphere ablaze with tension. "But you're living on borrowed time, and it seems I'm in short supply," the tall man shot back. The confrontation crackled with hostility as if the air itself held the promise of violence. "Security is paramount. You're endangering everything," the newcomer called out, gesturing around the room. I could feel her heartbeat quickening, mirroring the rising tension. "What is going to happen?" she whispered, and I could only offer her a sympathetic glance. "It's okay," I said softly, even though uncertainty gnawed at me. But before any more words could follow, the atmosphere cracked like thunder. Tension built between the two men until, without warning, a gunshot erupted outside, shattering the moment. The world shifted violently as the air thickened, and I could feel every muscle in my body tighten instinctively. Somewhere outside, chaos erupted. The terrified gasps and murmurings from the other patrons crescendoed into panic, fracturing our fragile sense of security. "Move," the tall man commanded, thrusting himself toward the entrance and motioning for us to follow. The bar erupted into a cacophony of screams and shuffling feet, merging the sounds of desperation with the echoes of gunfire that rattled the eardrums. I gripped her hand tightly, pulling her along with me as we dashed through the ragged crowd, navigating past tables and desperate faces etched with fear. But just as we reached the door, a figure appeared from the shadows, a man clad in dark clothing, stepping directly into our path. The adrenaline surged through my veins as I sensed the imminent threat, and in that split second, time slowed down. We were pinned against a wall of fate, every heartbeat thundering in unison with the tumult of the outside world. It became clear that our escape was no longer assured, and whatever force pursued us had just caught up, drawing the line between life and death closer than ever before. "Get behind me," I shouted instinctively, aware that courage alone might not seal our fate. Fear ignited my spirit, and with her pressed against me, I stood ready to face whatever darkness awaited us. The weight of our choices hung heavily over us, and one gut-wrenching thought anchored my heart. There was no turning back from this storm. The chaos outside blurred the line between life and death, but it was the figure standing before us that turned terror into an urgent plea for survival. I felt the tightening of my throat, constricting against the panic that rose like bile. My pulse thrummed in the silence, each beat echoing the weight of what was to come. The man was blocking our only path to safety, a silent guardian turned adversary, eyes glimmering with a resolution that sent a shiver down my spine. "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to mask my fear with bravado. The deep growl of a gunshot echoed in the distance, punctuating my question with bitter conviction. "Not you," he replied, his voice gruff yet oddly calm amid the storm of emotions swirling within the bar. The certainty in his gaze shifted suddenly, no longer focused just on us, but on the room, both a sanctuary and a trap. "I want him." The tall man bristled beside us, his posture shifting from protective to defensive in an instant. "You shouldn't be here, Aaron. You don't understand the stakes." For a fleeting moment, bewilderment captured me. The name seemed to resonate like a distant Bell Talinga name that perhaps held more meaning than I grasped. In that second, it was a reminder of the fractured histories we each carried, buried beneath layers of survival and desperation. "Stakes?" I echoed, my voice cutting through the tension, desperate to find clarity. "What's going on? What stakes?" But before either man could answer, a new explosion of noise erupted beyond the entrance, the unmistakable hum of vehicles drawing nearer. The world outside crackled with urgency, and I was painfully aware that moments were all we had left. "We need to get out. Now," the tall man shouted, the protective instinct spilling into his tone. The all-too-familiar sensation of helplessness clawed at my chest, but amid the turmoil, my gaze met hers. The flicker of fear in her eyes unnerved me, but something else glowed softly between us, a spark of unyielding determination. "Stay close," I urged, pulling her behind me as I sidestepped the figure blocking our exit, adrenaline lending strength to my feet, my heart racing with an unnameable resolve. "We're not going to let this end like this." Just as I stepped forward, something caught my attention, a glimmer of silver in the man's hand. Time slowed again as reality crystallized. He wasn't just blocking our exit. He was armed and fully prepared to make this confrontation a deadly one. "Tell me what's happening," I shouted, my voice steadying in a desperate plea. "When the bullets start flying, you won't care," Aaron replied, frustration spilling from him like the rain from the earlier storm outside. It was in that moment I noticed the vulnerability in his eyes, the glimpse of a man worn down by battles unseen. "This is bigger than all of us." Thundering footsteps echoed beyond the door, and the world felt fragile, like shattering glass that had yet to fall. "It's not going to end well if you don't leave now," he urged, shifting his focus slightly to the entrance as if sensing the tidal wave of danger approaching. The air between us crackled with a haunting promise of enmity and protection, unsteady alliances weaving a tense tapestry between fear and bravery. I turned back toward her, our eyes locking in an understanding that transcended words. "We can't let ourselves be trapped," I murmured, the urgency of the situation thrusting us into a silent pact. Without another second to spare, I pushed forward, bringing her with me, seeking a way past this obstacle. As we broke from the wall into an unseen part of the room, the atmosphere shifted again, the pulse of desperation driving us deeper into the maze of misfortune that had become our reality. But before we could reach the far side, the unmistakable sound of a door slamming open echoed in our ears. I turned to see more figures emerging, faces shadowed yet identifiably, a group of pursuers, determined and hunted, all shackled by their own motivations. "Get out of the way," I yelled, almost instinctively fearing for her safety as I pushed her behind me once more. The realization that we'd become the prey hit sharply. It had been a trap all along, the web tightening around us just as the storm settled and rumbled outside. But amid the cacophony, a flicker of unexpected kindness broke through the madness. One of the Patransa women with a fierce gaze and a determination that ignited hope yelled back, rallying those in the bar to our side. "Fight! Draw them away!" The power in her voice infused the room with a new kind of energy as the bar erupted into chaos, patrons scrambling to defend one another against the encroaching threat. I could see the glint of courage blooming across weary faces, and for the first time, realization struck me that we were not alone in this battle. "Let's go," I shouted to her, casting off any doubts that lingered. Striding toward the back door, adrenaline surged through me. "We have to move. Follow my lead." With uncertainty etched across her features, she nodded, and together we pushed deeper into the storm of turmoil-dodging confrontations, sprinting down hallways, uncertainty hitting us at every turn. But as we reached the final stretch toward escape, the unsettling truth washed over me. The world we were thrown into had no clear way out, and with every echo of footsteps behind us, the tether holding us to safety tightened. Just then, something shattered the fragile notion of escape. The footsteps stopped. A sweeping silence cloaked the space as we turned to find Aaron confronting his pursuers, his silhouette stark against the flicked lights. Every instinct warned me to run, but as the confrontation morphed into a struggle, my heart plummeted. It became clear that the past was unresolved. There was a far greater force at play, secrets unraveling with each breath, and it left me reeling in a space where trust was scarce and the shadows whispered of betrayals I had yet to understand. All I knew was that as Aaron stood between us and the unknown, we remained entangled in a fate too turbulent to foresee, and the web would only tighten from here. The air was thick with unspoken words and the potential for violence as Aaron stood his ground. My heart raced, and I could feel the grip of fear tightening around my chest. It was impossible to discern who was on our side and who was the enemy. The line between protector and adversary blurred further with every escalating heartbeat. "Get back!" Aaron's voice boomed, slicing through the palpable tension like a knife. His figure remained rigid, an insurmountable wall, but the amount of energy he was expending drew a heavy toll. I could see shadows shift in the doorway, and a chill ran up my spine. The darkness was alive with faceless threats, and I was acutely aware that life hung in the balance. "Please," I shouted over the chaos, reaching for him, a desperate plea escaping my lips. "Don't do this." What was it I was trying to prevent? I didn't even know then. I couldn't understand the stakes he alluded to, but I felt grounded in a sense of self-preservation and an urge to protect the girl beside me, behind me. The patrons began rallying, emboldened by the fierce woman whose eyes sparked with an undaunted resolve. Their fragmented alliance seemed to form a fortitude as they rushed to arm themselves, each movement echoing a collective pulse of rebellion. "Together!" she yelled, and it infused them with vigor. "We outlast them if we outsmart them. Protect each other." I caught glimpses of the resolve in the faces surrounding us, and it struck me a truth resonated deeper than my own fear. This was not just about survival for us. It was a fight for unity, a rebellion against chaos, anchored by shared lives and hidden stories. But all of this was extinguished by the sound of footsteps rushing through the door. A group of men I felt I recognized, faces emerging from shadow to clarity. My stomach tightened as I scanned their expressions, searching for an inkling of mercy or remorse. They were familiar from the past, a fleeting whirlwind of memories that haunted the edges of my mind. However, a singular face stepped to the forefront, and the name suddenly materialized like a shattering glass, a name that cut deeper than the chaos around me. Jason. The past clawed at the edges of my consciousness, memories of his laughter and the friendship that once felt invincible filtering through the fog of my thoughts. The betrayal he had instigated shattered me, and now it caught in my throat like the bitterest of pills to swallow. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted over the din, my voice struggling against the tide of emotion. "What do you want?" Aaron flinched at my tone, his eyes narrowing. "Don't engage with them." But my heart propelled me forward as Jason stepped into the dim light of the bar, flanked by menacing silhouettes. "I want what's rightfully ours," he said, a mocking grin stretching across his face. "And it's time you learned the price of betrayal." "Betrayal?" I shot back, fire igniting my veins. "You brought this on yourself." The air crackled with electric tension, thick with a volatile mixture of anger and disappointment. But in that moment, amidst this relentless storm, one poignant thought surged forward. The more we fought, the stronger their grip tightened. Suddenly, a flare of light lit through the windows, headlights igniting like stars falling from the sky. I turned instinctively towards the bone-chilling sight, and as I did, panic surged around me. The vehicles beckoned with the ominous promise of a new threat. I could almost hear the others thinking the same thing. Our sturdy bastion was crumbling. "Scatter!" I heard the woman call, her voice breaking through the noise like a lighthouse guiding lost souls through a storm. "If we move fast, we can turn this around." I could feel the raw energy of the others as they bolted for the exits, but my gaze remained trapped on Eren. His fight held its ground, but the glimmer of despair in his eyes left me breathless. The gravity of things yet to come weighed heavy upon us. "She means to save you, you know," Jason taunted, accompanying the statement with a deliberately slow gait toward us. "But my men? They don't care for heroics. They want blood. Don't you dare," I yelled, stepping in front of Eren, believing in an instinctual layer of protection that pulsed through me. But as I stood tall, knowing I must shield him and those around me, the floor thudded unforgivingly beneath our collective desperation. And then, a single shot rang through the Baragun, echoing like a death knell that sang of inevitable loss. Time paused. The world ceased to exist in the manner we knew. I turned toward the noise, adrenaline crashing over me like tidal waves as silence followed in the wake. The thudding of my heart drowned out the chaos, and for the briefest moment, there was only emptiness. Eren was caught between shock and determination. His mouth parted in a silent echo of disbelief. In that frozen moment, I prayed to every force I could conceive that I was not too late, that the flicker of hope still existed, even in these fractured truths. And then the gaping void shattered as one final revelation gripped me. The identity of the shooter was revealed, and it struck harder than the bullet itself, turning our world upside down as realization laid bare what we were truly up against. The echoes of the past would never truly remain silent, and as that haunting name rang through the air, our fates intertwined in ways unrecognizable. The shadows encroached closer, and hope flickered like a dying ember caught in a tempest. "Run," I shouted, pushing against fear, desperate to escape. But nothing could prepare me for the collision of truths that loomed ahead, hanging in the air just like the gunshots' aftermath, threatening to unravel everything we thought we knew. And I was unsure if we would survive the next storm. The chaos was relentless, surging like an angry sea ready to consume us whole. I felt my heart thundering against my ribcage, a cacophony matching the tumult surrounding us. The bar was transforming into a battleground, fragmented and divided, where trust was as rare as daylight in the shadows that loomed over us. "Run," I shouted again, hoping that the desperation in my voice would pierce through the confusion. But my feet felt glued to the floor, unwilling to relinquish my place between Eren and the encroaching threat. Jason's laughter slashed through the air, sharp and cruel. "You think you can save him? You think any of this matters?" His men surged forward, a phalanx emboldened by his malevolence. I stumbled back, my head spinning as memories fought for dominance. I remembered Jason's voice, once warm and comforting, now distorted by betrayal and rage. How could someone once held so close become a symbol of everything I feared? My gaze shot to Eren, vulnerability etched across his face, and I felt fear morph into something else: an urgent need to protect, to understand, to resist whatever force wanted to tear us apart. Just then, a comforting squeeze on my arm pulled me back from the precipice of despair. It was the fierce woman who had rallied the patrons. Her eyes were fierce, a flicker of determination igniting a spark in the hopeless haze. "We fight together," she implored, her grip a lifeline drawing me back into the fray. Behind her, the patrons who once seemed fragmented now coalesced into a united front, emboldened by a spirit of resilience. Their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance, the whispers of purpose fueling their resolve, the fear draining away from the group, replaced by a shared commitment to one another. A flash of anger ignited within me. "He was my friend," I shouted at Jason as tears fought to break free. "What have you become?" He stepped closer, eyes narrowing, his expression shifting from mockery to something darker. "Hunger. Your friend? Maybe once. But I see the truth clearer now. What was friendship to you I turned into power." His voice slowed, each word a jagged blade cutting deeper into my heart. "And you're still blind to it." My breath caught, paralyzed by the weight of his revelations. But before I could respond, an unexpected warmth flickered at my shoulder. I turned to find Eren steadying himself, his jaw clenched but eyes glaring with newfound resolve. "We'll show you the power of unity," he said, his voice rising above the clamor. In that moment, an intoxicating energy pulsed through the air. We were not just resisting. We were pushing against the tides of rage and hatred threatening to consume us. The bar, our sanctuary, transformed into a cradle of rebellion brimming with strength from collective histories intertwined. But as we prepared to confront the threats descending upon us, another piercing gunshot rang out, closer this time. The crack shattered the fragile determination that had begun to blossom, and fear clawed its way back. Panic erupted again, limbs moving chaotically as patrons scattered, moments of fierce resolve buckling under the weight of fear. The woman rallied them back, but I felt the panic rising sharply within me. "It's not one of us," I cried, barely registering her arrival at my flank. I was there, tethered to something raw, fierce, and unyielding. "Stick together," she shouted, grounding us. It was a lifeline extended in the face of dread. "Remember, they won't take us down easily." Her eyes burned bright, igniting something within me that yearned for resistance. But another familiar voice broke through, one that sent cold tendrils of dread enveloping my skin. It was Jason, his expression morphing to show the first hint of desperation. "I didn't want this," he murmured, not to me but into the air, and yet the flicker of remorse was unmistakable, and just as suddenly silence enveloped the room. It was heavy, suffocating, pregnant with unaddressed emotions. The kind of silence where revelations slithered out of unseen corners. "What do you mean?" I asked, unsure if I wanted to hear the answer, but my heart hungered for the truth. He shook his head, and for a moment, the walls of animosity began to crumble around us. I thought I could control this. I thought it would make me stronger. But I'm losing everything I ever cared about, he confessed, raw and unguarded. His voice laced with regret that shocked me into silence. Aaron's expression softened, confusion mingling with compassion. "You're still choosing to fight against your own. Why, Jason?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. The moment stretched, thickening. Hope tangled with disbelief as I sensed a flicker of the Jason I once knew yearning to break through. But before an answer could touch his lips, a roar of engines surged outside, coupled with shattering glass as a figure barreled through the doorway, gun raised, armed and unyielding. The world narrowed to a single point, and as that figure advanced, forward momentum fueled by visceral instinct, I realized that clarity and resolution were but ephemeral. The enemy's identity was a new layer of confusion, a harbinger of unfathomable choices yet to come. My heart raced once more, uncertainty screaming through me as my voice emerged raw and urgent. "Aaron," I began, desperate, feeling the ground shift beneath me once again. And in that moment, the fragility of everything we clung to threatened to break apart. "Stay close," he shouted, urgency anchoring his voice as we braced for whatever awaited us next in this tempest of haunted betrayals and unspoken truths. The storm was only beginning. The air grew thick with tension as the armed figure stepped through the shattered doorway, shards of glass glimmering ominously in the dim light. A collective breath held in unison, suspended as if the very fabric of our reality threatened to unravel. I caught the glint of the weapon, a chilling reminder that our sanctuary had been breached. The figure wasn't just an intruder. They were a manifestation of the fear that had pursued us relentlessly. Aaron's grip tightened on my arm, his body rigid beside me, but I could see in his eyes a flicker of something I had almost forgotten: courage. Needing to anchor myself in that moment, I turned my attention back to Jason, whose face was a portrait of conflict, anger mixed with an underlying vulnerability that seemed to mirror my own turmoil. We were all spinning on the precipice of choices we never anticipated. "Who are you?" The woman at our side spoke with defiant strength, and I respected her more than ever. "What do you want?" The figure, clad in darkness, hesitated, uncertainty in their grip. My heart pounded loudly, urging for clarity. It was a face I almost recognized, shadows obscuring familiarity. "I've come for him," the intruder rasped, eyes locking onto Jason. "You don't understand the danger you're in." Jason shook his head, confusion mingling with anger as the realization penetrated the atmosphere like a cold knife. "Is it you? Did you bring this?" "No," the figure snapped, their voice raw and desperate. "I was trying to protect you." The threat of vulnerability echoed with an insecurity that sent shivers down my spine, reminding us all that even the fiercest fighters had their demons around us. The patrons began to rally, reclaiming their footing like an army ready to defend their encampment. Their whispers of resolve filled the room, but I still felt the gnawing uncertainty festering within me. Would we fight for Jason, or would his past consume us all? The resolve faded as another gunshot shattered the stillness, this time followed by the crackle of explosions outside. The disruption was rapid and unforgiving. Fear clawed at my throat. There was no sanctuary left. The waitress from earlier stood rooted by the bar, eyes wide, but there was an unyielding spark within her. "We cannot lose hope. We are stronger together," she shouted. Although I wore my fear like a cloak, I felt an ember of belonging begin to glow within me. I glanced at Aaron, who met my gaze with an unwavering determination, borrowing strength from one another through silent acknowledgement. We were in this together. "Get out now," barked the armed figure again, and as their eyes darted toward the door, the undeniable charge of urgency hung palpable. My heart thudded painfully, urging me to act. "We can't let him take us down. Back to your places. We fight for each other." But before the patrons could form a cohesive defense, Jason stepped forward, his face pale yet fiercely set. "No," he declared, voice steadying with the weight of conviction even as the chaos roared around us. "I can't let this happen. They'll make this right." Suddenly, in a turn of events as shocking as the night itself, Jason's tone shifted. "I'll go with you. I'll end this." "What?" I gasped, horrified by the prospect of losing him even further down the rabbit hole of betrayal we had already traversed. "You can't. I have to," Jason pleaded, desperation brewing in the depths of his eyes. "They know something I didn't want you to be a part of." As he gestured toward the figure, who stood uncertainly, the space between us grew heavier. A silence interrupted only by the urgency of our labored breaths hovered in the room, pregnant with implications yet to be realized. "What do you mean?" I pressed, pushing through the veil of distrust that clouded my heart. I needed to understand, perhaps for my own sanity, perhaps to reclaim the boy who was once my friend. Before Jason could answer, the armed figure took a step forward, voice strained. "There are forces at play that you don't comprehend. Reality is not as it seems anymore." The way their gaze flickered between Jason and me held. The promise of danger-off truths obscured beneath layers of betrayal and camaraderie. "Someone is watching," they confessed, an unraveling of the past sewn into their words. "Watching?" Aaron echoed, and a low tension settled over us as uncertainty reared its head. "What do you know?" In that moment, the ground beneath us quaked with truth, raw and real. I felt my heart race. Fear mixed with the sweet essence of camaraderie. The realization that we were in too deep, too entangled in the web of choices we had inherited or created ourselves. And then came the crash, a deafening escape of air as the front door burst open with relentless force, a swarm of shadows cascading into our sanctuary, and we stood there on the brink of everything we once knew, thrust into a night where old loyalties would collide with newfound purpose. In that moment, my mind raced, a torrent of choices unfurling before me. To trust Jason again as the darkness crept closer? To forge ahead with my heart wide open, ready to confront the specter of everything that had brought us here? Or would this terrifying revelation unravel our very hearts in the chaos that lay ahead? "Stay together," I shouted one last time, heart drumming in my chest, feeling the shift of impending revelations. Because one thing was certain, we were about to discover more than just the consequences of our past. We were about to face the realities of our oncoming future. The chaos erupted like an angry storm, the air electric with tension. I felt us all teeter on the edge of a knife, the very breaths we took caught between the gravity of what was unfolding. Jason's revelation hung in the air like lead, heavy and suffocating. My heart thundered in my chest as each pulsating beat resonated with dread. A desperate plea to keep the storm at bay, keep us safe amidst the encroaching darkness. "Trust me," Jason said, his eyes searching my face, mirroring the turmoil within me. Each word was wrapped in an imploring vulnerability. He wanted forgiveness as much as he wanted safety, and perhaps even redemption. But could I truly trust him again? My heart ached with the tangled shadows of our past, memories flooding back hidden betrayals and laughter stitched into the fabric of our friendship. This moment didn't just shift the tides. It threatened to drown us all. What if this is a trap? I whispered fervently to Aaron beside me, his presence steadying my wavering resolve. Fear flickered across his face, mingling with determination, a fierce combination I had grown to admire. But before he could respond, the figure in the shadows stepped forward, their posture radiating urgency. No one here is your enemy yet, but you will have to choose a side. You either fight against the darkness or let it consume you. The sound of muffled gunfire echoed in the distance, punctuating their words with ominous weight. Taking a breath, I stepped closer to Jason, who stood tall, name on the tip of my tongue, wanting to ask if the boy I had known was still there under all the layers of torment and choices. If we fight together, I murmured, desperation threading through my voice, you have to promise you will never betray us again. I can't survive another heart-wrenching loss. His gaze flickered, shame and regret mingling within the chaos that surged around us. Promise. I'm done running. I'm ready to face what's coming. But you have to understand the stakes are higher than any of us realized. He gestured around him, eyes wild. They know about the past you think you can escape. This is just the beginning. I swallowed hard. I could feel Aaron's tension beside me, pulling me into a whirlwind of emotion that threatened to spill over. Together, we'll navigate this storm, I reassured Aaron, slowly finding hope amidst the disarray. And with a collective resolve, we turned our attention back to the figure looming at the entrance. Then lead us, I said, steeling myself against the uncertainty that hovered over us like a shadow. In that moment, an unspoken alliance formed. We were no longer just strangers tossed into the storm. We became battered ships coiling together against the tide, willing to brave whatever storm awaited us next. The armed figure behind Jason nodded reluctantly, sensing the shift, but still wary. There's a safe house nearby. We can get you there, but you must act quickly. They're relentless. The hunters are drawing nearer. As I looked around at the people, faces wrinkled with fear yet glimmering with a newfound hope, their camaraderie fueled the fire within me. Then let's move, I shouted, breaking the tension that loomed. But just as we made our way to the dim light of the exit, a noise erupted from behind, the unmistakable snarl of betrayal, cloaked in eerily familiar laughter that sent chills racing across my spine. I turned to find the other man from earlier, one whom Jason once called a friend in moments of tranquility. O'Malley? Jason hissed, shades of memories dripping from his words like ice slipping from the edge of a glacier. You're a fool for coming back here. Am I? Or am I the one who's finally wise enough to see through your facade? O'Malley's voice trembled with a fury I recognized all too well. You walked away from us, Jason. You think you're better off now? It's only a matter of time before they tear this all apart. I felt the collective panic start to blossom in the room around us. This isn't what you want, I urged O'Malley, my heart pounding against the uncertain fate he was weaving. Don't you see? This conflict is bigger than anything you care to admit. He only laughed, the laughter exploding like shards of glass all around us, tearing away at our shared hope. Bigger? No, it's just beginning. You're all pawns in a game you don't even understand. Enough, I shouted, grounding my voice against the building chaos. Let's not forget we were friends once. We can still be allies. But as those words fell from my lips, the high stakes of our confrontation became all too clear. From behind O'Malley, figures emerged, his men, cloaked beneath the veil of darkness, each one armed and vigilant. The choice before us, fight or run, rippled through the air, thick with anxiety. Back away, I shouted, stepping protectively in front of Aaron and the others, emboldened by a flicker of hope. O'Malley smirked, crossing his arms. You really think you can protect them? Think again. And that's when I realized something monumental was brewing between us. The fire of desperation ignited by betrayal, pain, and fear, a boiling cauldron challenging our identities, shaking foundations until they shattered like a mirror encompassing our truths. As chaos erupted around us, Each action unfurled a new twist. More than just our survival was at stake. The true test of who we were, what we became, and where we would go snaked its way to the forefront. And in that heartbeat, a moment suspended in time, every one of us realized that our destinies would forever be intertwined by choices made in this tempest. The frail line between friend and foe was now shattered, each action an echo of all we had sacrificed, all we'd dared to become or perhaps warned against becoming altogether. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, sharp and insistent, pain breaking the air as it rippled through me. I turned to find Jason standing amid the wreckage of fragile trust, the light in his eyes dulled by something darker as his gaze locked onto me. "Choose!" he called, voice ragged and desperate. "The past can't hold you. Fight or walk away." And in that moment, standing on the precipice of everything we had faced together, I realized I chose to fight. The storm raged on, but within my heart, I finally made peace with my own truth. Somehow, against all odds, our fragmented lives would weave back together, crafting a resolution deeper than any shadow that sought to break us apart. "Now, let's finish this," I said resolutely, grounding my call into the very marrow of my being. United, against the storm, and for the ones we loved most. As I took a decisive step forward, forming a line with Aaron, Jason, and the strangers who had become my allies, I felt warmth spread through me, illuminating the darkest corners of our fear. We would rise from the shadows, transforming into an array of whatever beauty could be hidden within our fight. And as the final pieces fell into place, I understood profoundly. Darkness may crumble around us, but together, we could light the path home no matter how treacherous. Not just for hope, but for the promise of redemption. We fought through storms for a battle just beginning, one where we would reclaim our rightful embrace with tomorrow. In that resolve, we readied ourselves against the oncoming tide of chaos, armed with the weight of our choices, holding tight to the flickering flame of unity that would always guide us through the darkest of nights. Together, I breathed, igniting the last flicker of courage in my heart, one that would guide me forward into whatever awaited, ready to embrace the power of love, loyalty, and a fierce determination that would transcend any storm.